It's the third in our series on mechanisms of evolution. Here we're going to talk about isolation and gene flow. This is your level 3 notes. It's me, Moser, and after this video, you should be able to analyze a population undergoing isolation and predict patterns of gene flow and predict potential speciation. You should already know what gene flow, speciation, and natural selection are. You know, the basics. Meet the Great Black Swamp. This is in Ohio. This was an enormous forested wetland that covered most of northwest Ohio at the time of European colonization until it was drained, tiled, and developed for farming and for towns. That happened in the 1850s. Now, the Great Black Swamp was home to many species, but we're going to focus on one little reptile, the spotted turtle, Chlemys guttata. These are very small, rather endangered turtles that live in wetlands along the east coast of the United States and the remaining wetlands along Lake Erie. And when I say small, a full-grown adult spotted turtle's shell, well, it's generally under 5 inches long. That's about 12.5 centimeters. It's tiny enough to fit in your hand. Aww. And when I say endangered, spotted turtles lost a lot of habitat. Did I mention the former Great Black Swamp? Yeah, that's a lot of habitat. What remains of the Black Swamp in northwest Ohio today are a whole lot of small, isolated wetlands. Isolated, you said? Yeah. And in many of these tiny pockets of remaining wetlands are small populations of spotted turtles, which are isolated from one another by roads and farm fields and developments. Just like any other species, of course, the spotted turtles have some natural variation among them. And if we travel to some of these isolated wetlands, we might actually notice some patterns where turtles from this part of the former Great Black Swamp look a little different from turtles from the southern part of the Great Black Swamp. Well, let's try to imagine which of these isolated populations might still have occasional gene flow between them. Well, it sure doesn't look like populations in 1 and 6 have any chance of meeting up to exchange genetic material. In other words, mate. Really, it doesn't look like any of these tiny little turtles would be able to meet up and swap genes. Oh, wait a minute. Did I mention that wetlands 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all located along the same stream that feeds into Lake Erie? It might actually be possible for turtles from wetlands 2 and 3 to meet up. Maybe 3 and 4 too. Turtles from wetlands 5 and 6 might be able to mate on occasion. Oh, did I mention that 7 and 9 are also located along another small stream? So, using the map shown here, which has been mostly reprinted on your notes/worksheet, which of these populations do you think might have gene flow between them? Are there any populations that seem to be completely isolated? Based on that, which populations do you think are most likely to undergo speciation? What about this question? Which populations, if reintroduced to one another, would you expect to have the best chances of successful mating? Okay, think on those for a little bit. Tiger beetles! They are shiny and they can fly. Beat that. Before we go any farther, I should issue this disclaimer. This is not a verifiable natural history of the tiger beetle in eastern North America, but it's an example. Let's imagine that from one ancestral population in the northern reaches of eastern North America, that would be north of the Appalachian Range, tiger beetles have managed to colonize both sides of the Appalachian Mountains, the east and west sides. And as they've moved south, the populations on the east side of the mountains never crossed the mountains. Ditto for the ones on the west side of the range. Speciation has occurred several times in the past 450 million years. That's the approximate age of the Appalachians. Until the tiger beetles on the western side of the Appalachians, well, they look pretty different from their cousins on the eastern side. So, based on the map we're showing here, which of these species of tiger beetles do you think would still be likely to be able to mate? Which species do you think would be capable of exchanging genes? And which species do you think would be least likely to show any gene flow between them? If species 4 and 5 end up with ranges that overlap at the southern end of the mountain range, do you think they'll be capable of interbreeding? Why? Or why not? Okay, this has been fairly brief, but hopefully it's given you just a little bit of a way to think about analyzing populations that are undergoing isolation, and a way to think about predicting the patterns of gene flow and potential speciation. That's it.